We have become a planet of publishers. Everything today is about content, which means everything is about writing and content. All your favorite YouTubers have script writers, and in fact, John Deere, yes, the tractor company, just announced they are hiring a chief tractor officer. Their job, in essence, they'll be responsible for creating content across all social media channels. And whilst this presents a great opportunity, and it's how a lot of fortunes are currently being made, it is also your competitors' awesome opportunity, your rivals, friends. So how can you become awesome at writing and therefore great at creating content? Well, for the past 5-6 years, I've had this book on my desk the entire time. It's by Anne Hadley and it's called Everybody Writes. I use this as a handbook, if you like, that I refer to all the time, whether I'm writing content for this YouTube channel, for Twitter, for my newsletter, or for any other purpose that I have. And why should you listen to me about writing? Well, I've run a publishing company for over 10 years, helped people write best-selling books. I've grown Twitter accounts to 25,000 plus followers, and I've built 2 email newsletters to around about 17,000 subscribers each. So I know a fair bit about writing, and in this video I'm going to break down my favorite lessons from the book, the ones that I go back to constantly. One of the mistakes that people make about writing is they look at it like it's this art. You know, great writers are often admired, like Pablo Picasso. We also see people who've published a book or who write columns in newspapers as writers, but the truth is we are all writers. But great writers are more like bodybuilders, right? Someone take Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example. Think of writing in the same way that you would lifting weights at the gym. If you want to get better at bicep curls, you have to do them every day for 10 minutes, and you will. And this is the same for writing, right? The secret to great writing is just a schedule, having a schedule, doing it over and over. It's just another muscle that you need to work regularly. So the key to being a better writer is to write more. You know, the secret sauce here is to find the time of day when you're most productive. Benjamin Franklin, for example, had a routine, that he stuck to, right? He did the same thing every day, followed the exact same routine. And so your writing and your content creation, as Anne puts it, needs to become a habit, right? Something that you do daily. Eventually, you'll just do it without even noticing. And so the goal with your writing should always be for the consumption of your work to be fun, right? Even if it's something business related, make sure that whoever is consuming your content is having fun, they're enjoying it, it's easy to consume. The next key lesson is to forget what you learned in school, right? I'm sure if there are any teachers watching right now, English teachers, they might be a bit cross at the sound of that comment, but I'll be very specific on what I mean here. So I'm not talking about the important bits, grammar, spelling, those are really important. But at school, you tend to be rewarded for being long-winded, right? Using really fancy words. Most assignments are based on a minimum word count, right? Rather than a maximum. And the more you actually write and the more complicated it is, the better you score, right? And it doesn't work like that in the real world. In the real world, you are rewarded for brevity and clarity. So get to the point really quickly and do it clearly so that everybody can understand you, because the more people that can understand your writing, the more impact it will have, and the more people will read it, so it'll be consumed more widely. The other point that seems odd to say, but it's that publishing is a privilege, right? So in a world where we can put together a blog, a post, a tweet, publish it right away, we don't actually see publishing as a privilege. And really we all have access to it anytime that we want, but it should be seen as a privilege. So view the relationship you have with your audience as extremely important, right? Put their needs above yours. And so brevity and clarity, as I mentioned briefly before, are the key here, right? This doesn't mean that you make things as short as possible just for the sake of it. But really the way to think about your content is to create as much value as possible, right? Will someone find this valuable? And as long as people walk away from what you've written with value, then you've got it right. And of course, if you're giving them value, then they're much more likely to share it, with friends, with family, with whoever, with colleagues, and your writing will go further. So the other writing practice that I got from this book is to say the most important thing first. So I look at every sentence I've written, every paragraph, every tweet, whatever it is, and I think, have I said the most important thing first, right? And so I'll use an example to demonstrate what I mean by this. So if we take this sentence, according to the National Assessment of Adult Literacy, NAAL as they're known, released in 2006 by the US Department of Education, 30 million adults struggle with basic reading tasks, right? The main idea here is that millions of people are not fully literate, but it's been lost in the sentence, right? Instead, it should read, 30 million adults struggle with reading, according to the National Assessment of Adult Literacy, NAAL report released in 2006 by the US Department of Education, right? I've put the most important thing first, which catches your attention, and then of course the rest just validates it, right? Here is the headline, the thing that stands out, and here's the evidence that backs it up, right? So you can see why that's a much more impactful way of writing. The next point here from the book is that you want to have a writing GPS, right? It can seem like a huge task, almost insurmountable at times, and it really helps to have a plan in place, like a process that you follow. So in her book, Anne outlines this 12-step process, and I've created my own, which is a bit more brief. I use this for writing on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on my email newsletter. My process for YouTube videos, for example, is a little bit different. But the way I approach my plan is as follows. Okay, so when I'm thinking about writing, I first start with the goal in mind, right? What do I want someone to get from this? So let's imagine it's a post about writing. I want to teach you, by the end of this post, I want you to be a better writer. I want you to have some tools, some frameworks you can use to be a better writer. Great. So that's my goal, right? The next thing I do is I then reframe it, and I think to myself, okay, is this giving value to the person that's reading this? How can I give more value? And the way I'm reframing it is I'm thinking about what I'm writing from the perspective of whoever is reading it. So, when they're reading through this, are they getting value the whole time? Am I achieving that goal? And am I helping them to become a better writer, giving them a framework they can use, some useful advice, right? So that's how I reframe the process for whoever is consuming it. The next thing I want to do is come up with a headline or come up with a hook that's really going to grab people's attention, because if you don't grab their attention, they're never going to read through, right? So you want it to be something that really captures them and they just have to read more, opens a curiosity gap. So it might be something like, the top 5 tips to improve your writing. And if you're a writer who wants to improve your writing, chances are you'll be intrigued by that. I would brainstorm it for longer and come up with more, but that's a very quick idea of how to do it. And then the final thing I'm thinking about, so these are the first 4 steps before I write anything, is I think, what is the action I want someone to take after they've consumed this? So they've read through the post, do I then want them to click a link, subscribe to a newsletter, follow me on social media? What is the goal of what I'm writing here in terms of taking an action, right? What's that next action that I'd like them to take? Okay, then the next thing I'm doing is I plan. So I'll bullet point out the main things that I want to say, the main items I want to cover, the main things I want to get across in the post. And this helps me because I'm never then getting lost. If I'm writing and maybe I get a little bit of writer's block, I just look back at my bullet points and go, okay, I've hit this point, this point, this point. I want to explain this point a bit more, and then I've got these, right? So when you have this plan to follow, it makes it so much faster to get your post out there. And the next step is called the ugly first draft, right? So I'm always thinking, I just want to get a really ugly first draft down, because once I've created that first draft, then from there I can just improve upon it, right? So I'll just push it out. I'll kind of set myself a limit. Depends on what I'm writing. If I was writing a chapter of a book, it might be half an hour, 60 minutes. If I'm writing a tweet, it'll be 5 minutes. Whatever it is. And then once that's complete, I just get up and I go for a walk, right? That's the next thing, is just leave it. That's kind of the idea. It might be that you have other work to do, so you might go write something else, or you might do some phone calls or record a video, or do something different, just to get away from what you've just written. And then when you come back to it, you can edit it with a fresh approach. So I'll of course briefly look back at the goal, think about the value I wanted to give, the action I wanted them to take, look at my plan and say, okay, that was the goal, that was the plan, right, let me have another look at my ugly first draft. And that's when I edit. And you'll be amazed, when you come back to it that second time, just all the things that jump out at you that you can improve. So that's really how I like to plan it. And then once I've done that editing, I might even walk away, come back to it again, or I might finish it and say, yeah, that was spot on, really happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and press publish. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, all about how I think about writing. Writing is so important to all aspects. Marketing, of course, it's really important. Communicating if you're a leader, talking with colleagues, getting your message out there, whatever it is, writing is the fundamental core of everything that we do. Make sure to like the video if you've enjoyed it, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.